For those of you who are Twitter savvy photographers, then I probably don't need to do too much of an introduction. But today I'm here meeting Verity Milligan, who is a female photographer who I would say does a lot of landscape, architecture, that sort of work, but pretty varied stuff. So why don't you tell me and everyone else a bit about you?
Okay, so yeah, I'm I guess ostensibly a landscape photographer, cityscape. I don't know. I find being pigeonholed like always something I'm trying to break out of anyway. But
Sure.
I really enjoy being in the landscape, so it's natural for me to kind of use that as a stepping off point to take photos of. And I suppose what I share on Twitter a lot of is kind of the cityscapes I do and the landscapes I take when I'm
Sure.
out and about. Yeah.
Okay, so you obviously love photography from what you do. So was there an image when you were younger that first really impacted you, something you really took notice of?
See, this is an interesting one because I didn't pick up a camera until I was 25, so I didn't really acknowledge photography as an art form, to be fair, because what I really wanted to be was a painter, and you might be able to tell that I'm a failed painter from my landscape images. Like, painting's really hard, photography's much easier, let's go down that route. So, oddly, the one thing that I remember photographically from my childhood is having like a film camera, and you know those residential things you go in junior school where you get sort of sent off to the country for a week. And my dad sent me off with this little 35mm Nikon, and I remember taking some pictures of just fields of corn. And I remember when they came back, looking at them like, these are all right, these fields of corn. And that was the last time I took a photo for about 15 years after that. So there hasn't been an image necessary that inspired me to get into photography. I think the reason I got into photography is just because I like being outdoors.
Sure.
And I was looking for that kind of creative outlet, I guess. I did a lot of video when I was younger, but it seemed to pass me by that you could do still images.
Sure.
So when I found that out, and when I finally picked up a digital SLR, I was like, I can create stuff that doesn't involve me shouting at a canvas because I'm terrible at painting.
But it does give you a reason, I guess, to be outside as well. You know, if you're into photography, it does give you a reason to go and get up early or stay out late and do those things.
I think so, and I think that's become more and more the reason that I go out. I think it's still partly because being outdoors just makes me feel better. And if I'm ever in a sort of funk or feeling low, if I go for a walk anywhere, whether it's local to my house or up a hill, it will just instantly make me feel better. So having a camera with me, although it weighs me down and slows me down, it sort of feels like a natural extension of just enjoying the landscape and being outside.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel that security when they're holding their camera when they're out. It gives them a reason to be there, gives them a reason to be standing, staring at the same thing for a while and taking it all in, I guess. So you entered photography, I guess, slightly later than some people develop the interest. But if you're coming from an artistic background, I guess you've already sort of got a knowledge of light and the way things work and, you know, compositionally. But how did you then develop that skill? Did you take courses or you self-taught?
I think all of my art teachers would disagree that I had any knowledge of composition. But I think for me, just going out, making mistakes, taking lots of photos early on, probably when I first picked up a camera around 2008, just getting outside with it and really enjoying the process of taking an image and taking it back and editing it. And that kind of instant gratification you can sometimes get with photography that is much harder to get with any other sort of art form at times. And then sort of looking at what other people were doing on the social media of the time, so Flickr, that's pretty much it. And then trying to emulate that in a way. So I think a lot of my influences are just the contemporaries that I kind of bumped into on the internet in those kind of early days. So from sort of 2008 onwards, I mean, Flickr was pretty at its heyday by then.
Yes. Yeah.
So I just and self-taught, used a couple of tutorial sites to teach myself how to use Photoshop and worked out how to use Lightroom. And then it was just trial and error. And I think the more I did, the more, and I think with photography, the more you do, the more you start to see. The more you start to see, the more it becomes second nature and instinct. And then the further you get into it, you start to develop your own style and your own way of seeing stuff.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think what I do is unique at any level, because it's just, it's just one of those things. It's really hard to be new and different in a very crowded world, as it were.
Yeah.
But I think because I really enjoy it, that doesn't really get in the way. I really just enjoy going out, taking an image, looking at that image, trying to get it to the place where I think it reflects what I saw when I was outside, which is different from what everyone else may have seen, and that's fair enough. And and then, the last stage of that at the minute, because we live in a sort of social world, is putting it out there and seeing what other people think about it as well.
Yeah. And how do you find, because obviously you go out a lot to do the landscapes, it's a lot of late nights, early mornings. I know obviously you're based around Birmingham, so you do a lot around there. Is there anything that you found being a female photographer, and there are less of us? I've had, certainly through Wex, I've had people talk to me and friends as well, saying, don't feel that comfortable being out in the middle of nowhere, at night. How do you deal with that? Do you experience those sort of concerns? How have you found?
Yeah, I think in the countryside, I don't feel particularly threatened at all.
Right.
I think especially because I go out really early, there tends not to be other people around. If there are other people around, they're other photographers, so we generally all just avoid each other. Or standing on a shoreline, not talking to each other.
Yeah.
In the city, it's a little bit more difficult at times. I think I have to be more aware, and I think it's just because there's more people around. And if I'm out super early, especially on sort of weekends in the city, you get the people who just haven't gone to bed yet, and they're still rolling around, and so there I have to be a bit more aware. So, but when I'm in the countryside, I and it might just be that I haven't had a bad experience, but for me, it's nice to be in the quiet. It's nice to be kind of away from everyone. Classic introvert. I'll be outside. Nobody follow me. And I do occasionally take my dog with me, but she's whiny. So if I stand still for too long, she just then gets really upset. Like, why are we standing still?
It's time for a walk.
We need to be moving right now. But so that doesn't work. I'm waiting for the light to appear with my dog just crying next to me. I think it can be off-putting for some people, and I appreciate that, especially in a city environment, which is why I think like social media is really good, because you've got the Instagram community and you can get sort of stuff organised through that, and then stuff like Wex do walkabouts as well, which is really good because you're in a group of people then, so it feels a lot more secure. And I think those things are really useful for people to build confidence as well about being in a space with your camera. And good insurance. So if someone comes
good
after
insurance, yes, definitely.
Like, take the camera. It's fine. I'm insured.
I mean, there are certain things you can do as well, right? Like, I think there's this myth, obviously, from centuries gone past that women are more vulnerable, especially if they're alone. But I think a lot of the time you can't tell if a photographer's female or male when they're out, or other when they're out anyway, because they'll have hoods up, 4 hats on, mittens, trying to stay warm in this horribly cold morning. And I think it's more a lot of the time about the equipment, isn't it? As you said, that worry of you've got this big, however many thousands of pounds worth of equipment, or maybe not that much, but still, worth a fair bit of cash there. And it's the worry of having that out. But I think there's certainly things I do, I'm very close to my tripod, or, my bag is on me and strapped, there's certain things that I think you can do. But as you say, with social media, there's so many communities out there now, as you say, across Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, that you can be involved in, I guess, and sort of, if you are a bit worried, local camera clubs as well.
Absolutely,
allow you to have that.
Loads of resource, but I think, as long as you're keeping your kit close to you, I accidentally left my bag on the ground. I saw a shot and left my bag on the ground and went off sort of 30 yards away, and it was really quiet in this place where I was. And I turned back around and this woman was just holding my bag up, and I was like, it's my bag, don't worry. And she's like, oh, I'm really sorry, my dog just went and peed in it.
Oh my
God. Great. So that's another thing. It might not be a threat from another person, but if you leave your bag on the ground, a dog may pee in it.
Yes, that's a good bit of advice, to be honest.
And then, my dog, when I got home, was just like, where have you been? This just smells like another dog. Yes, it was horrific.
Cheated on me.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah. I don't advocate any sort of use of force or anything if someone
No.
is coming at you, but we've all got tripods.
Yeah, that's true.
Defend yourself with the tripod. But yeah, I think I think there's places that people can go to find other people that they can spend time outdoors with, so they don't feel so vulnerable.
And you notice an overlap of arts as well, I think. Obviously yourself, it's a great example. Obviously you love to paint. Now you're with photography. I think there's always in the art world an overlap of different arts. And I think you see it a bit more in the communities now, especially on Instagram. You have people meeting up who love to dance, or they like certain sports, and they'll meet up with photographers or videographers, or people who like to, splash paint across canvases. I think that it's quite nice that everyone's sort of coming together in that space.
Which I think is the beauty of social media. Obviously there's stuff that happens on social media that maybe is less useful to community cohesion, but I think finding other people with similar interests or aligning interests and being able to connect with those really is special.
Yeah, definitely. So coming into this industry, it's not the easiest. I mean, there used to be kind of a defined path, right? So you'd study photography, or you'd go be a second for an established wedding photographer or portrait photographer in a studio. I don't think things are that simple anymore. I mean, obviously there's social media, but social media it's very easy to get lost. There's a lot of voices shouting. What advice could you give to someone who's looking to move forward into photography?
Yeah, I think there is no defined way in anymore. And in a way that means there's a lot of freedom. I think when people ask me this, when I think about how I've ended up here, it all feels a bit surreal because it wasn't an intention. I didn't set out thinking, I'm going to take pictures of landscapes or I'm going to take pictures of Birmingham, and that's going to find me in a place within this creative industry. It kind of happened by accident, which is probably not what people want to hear, but I found something that I really enjoyed doing, and it seemed to resonate with other people, and especially the Birmingham cityscape stuff. That kind of gave me an outlet, and people really responded to it. And then, because there wasn't a huge amount of people doing a similar thing, it gave me a boost. And then I ended up with sort of national press around my images of Birmingham. And I think once you get that kind of momentum going, people recognise you as a creative, and then for me personally, then they started approaching me, asking me if I do work for them. So it was a weird kind of crossover moment that I didn't anticipate happening.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad it did, because it's taken me to this point. But I think sometimes it's hard to explain how that happened in a way.
Yeah,
There's no sort of defined path that I took, but I worked really hard in the sense that I was always taking photos and I was always trying to do better. And even now with commercial and client work, like whatever I take, I feel like it's never good enough. And I wonder if like with creatives, we're always sort of striving to be better.
Yeah.
And if you've got that kind of sense of there is always a learning curve, there's always something that you can be learning and doing better and trying to achieve, then if that sort of propels you into the industry a bit more. But I think a lot of it comes down to just getting out there, finding what you love to do and take photos of, and seeing how it evolves. And social media does really play a role in that. I know it's really easy to get lost. But, stuff like Wex Mondays, stuff like competitions that you can enter, all of those can give you an outlet. All of those can give you a little bit of... I guess exposure, not that we like that word, but and that can be really useful from a career point of view. But what I would sort of caution against is a lot of people think that photography as a job is just sort of 100% sort of taking photos, where I feel like that's maybe like 10% of my life is taking photos now.
Yeah, definitely.
And so much more of it is the admin side of things, or sort of talking to clients and meetings and editing and marketing yourself, and and I think if people are looking to into the industry, it's about fingers and pies as well.
Yeah.
So you can't just have one income stream, and I mean it's a bit dry when you start talking about income streams, but
No, not at all. People need to know the reality.
But yeah, like print sales and workshops and all of that. But I think one of the hardest things is holding on to your enjoyment of what you do as well. I think and I think a lot of people find the balance much nicer if they're sort of doing a little bit of freelance work, but also the job that they're doing otherwise. And I think finding that balance can be difficult sometimes. I know that I've basically ran along a sort of 2-career route for the last sort of 5 years, and I'm finally jumping off to being completely pro now. But I'm almost not holding on to that too tightly, because I think if I put all my sort of hopes and dreams into this one aspiration, and that's just putting too much pressure on it in a sense.
Yeah.
I think having the freedom to kind of take the photos I want to take, and if people enjoy them, that's really good, is much better than feeling like I want to set out to become a wedding photographer or set out to become an architectural photographer and try and just narrow into that route. You know, for me, I need to keep it open and fresh and enjoyable. And I think my advice would be that if people just find what they love and they do it with authenticity, people hook onto that.
Yeah.
People
yeah,
know when you're doing something because you love it and not because you're putting it out there for likes or comments or hoping to get work from it. And I think that's of real value. And it's not about just an image anymore. It's about you. It's about you behind the image. I think this is why you get really sort of successful, particularly landscape photography YouTube channels, is because people want to know who the person is who's creating that image and the process behind it. So you're a brand, and it sounds really sort of, I don't know, it doesn't sound like, oh yes, I'm the brand, but I guess you are.
It's true though, yeah.
And it's your online presence that people are connecting with. They're not just connecting with one image. It's a whole, I guess the whole package, which is really daunting for creatives because we tend to be quite, especially the photographers I know, tend to be quite shy. So if people are connecting with you as an individual, as well as your image, it takes a bit of readjustment.
Yeah.
But it's also really gratifying because people are respecting not just one image, but the whole body of work at times, which is really, really nice and encouraging. And I think for me personally, it's been really helpful and useful to have those kind of core people that are always there to support me and always there to kind of be positive about my work.
Well, thanks very much for coming in and meeting with us today. It's been super interesting to hear your opinions on coming into photography from maybe somewhere different than a lot of people are looking at now, or maybe somewhere where everyone thought was flooded, but there is a way to break through.
Absolutely, there's little niches in there, and if I can find a way in, anyone can find a way in. Don't have to be, I don't know, don't have to be the best photographer, as it were, but I think as long as you're willing to engage with people and put yourself out there, sometimes interesting things can happen.
Yeah, I mean, you're being super modest as well. You're like crazy talented. That has like a big part of it as well. Make sure to check out Verity Milligan online. On Twitter, you're at Vemsteroo.
That's the one.
We'll put links in the description, of course. But if you want to ask us any questions, you can pop some comments in the comments section. We will get back to you as soon as we can. But in the meantime, thanks for coming in and thank you for watching.